My sister and I graduated from the same college, on the same day, in the same gowns. But only one of us was worth paying for. When I asked why my tuition didn't matter, my mother looked me in the eye and said, "She deserves it more than you do." I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I stayed quiet and started planning. Because on graduation day, when my parents came smiling and proud, they finally realized what my silence had been building all along. On the morning of our graduation, we wore identical black gowns and stood shoulder to shoulder in the mirror of our childhood bathroom. Anyone looking in would have assumed we were equals, reflections of each other shaped by the same house, the same parents, the same chances. But as I adjusted my collar and stared at my own face, I felt the familiar distance between us, a gap that had never closed no matter how many birthdays we shared or how often people confused our names. My smile looked right, practiced and polite, but behind it sat something colder, something built slowly over years of learning exactly where I stood in my family. My name is Julie. I was born 4 minutes before my twin sister Lauren, but those minutes might as well have been a lifetime. From the beginning, she was the one everyone worried about, protected, praised, and excused. I was the one who learned early how to stand back, how to be quiet, how to make myself useful instead of visible. By the time we reached adulthood, the roles were so natural that no one questioned them anymore, least of all our parents. We crossed the same stage that afternoon, our names called from the same list, our degrees printed on the same heavy paper. The crowd clapped just as loudly for both of us. Cameras flashed. From the outside, it looked like a perfect moment, the kind families frame and hang in hallways. But when my name echoed through the auditorium, my parents' faces changed, and that shift didn't come from surprise or pride. It came from something they hadn't expected to see, something I'd spent years preparing without telling them. That moment began long before graduation day. Growing up, our house was always tidy, always camera-ready. White siding, trimmed hedges, a flag out front on holidays. Inside, family photos lined the walls, most of them featuring Lauren at the center, smiling brightly while I stood slightly off to the side. My mother would fuss over Lauren's hair before school, smoothing it down, fixing stray strands. If I asked for the same attention, she'd smile distractedly and tell me I was old enough to handle it myself. When we were 6, I fell off my bike and scraped my knee badly enough that blood soaked through my sock. My mother handed me a paper towel and said I'd be fine, that strong girls didn't cry over little things. A week later, Lauren twisted her ankle stepping off a curb. My mother carried her inside and called the pediatrician immediately, hovering until the swelling went down. That was the pattern, repeated so often it stopped surprising me. Birthdays made it clearer. Lauren unwrapped new toys, new clothes, sometimes things she'd mentioned only once in passing. I received practical gifts, often second-hand, presented with explanations about budgets and responsibility. When Lauren forgot homework, my mother wrote notes to excuse her. When I forgot, I got lectures about discipline and consequences. None of it was dramatic enough to fight over. It was quieter than that, sharper in the way it accumulated. By high school, I understood the rules. I didn't ask for much. I studied hard without announcing it. I took a part-time job at a local cafe and saved most of what I earned. Lauren spent her weekends at the mall with friends, trying on clothes she knew our parents would pay for. She'd ask my opinion, holding up dresses, smiling as if we were sharing something equal. I always told myself it didn't matter. Independence felt like a kind of shield, something I could hold on to when everything else felt uneven. Senior year arrived faster than I expected. Lauren and I applied to the same university, the same program, both of us aiming for accounting because it was practical and respectable. The day our acceptance letters arrived, we screamed together in the kitchen, jumping up and down like children again. For a moment, it felt like the distance between us had shrunk, like maybe adulthood would reset things. That illusion didn't last long. Later that night, I came downstairs to get water and heard my parents talking in the living room. I stopped on the stairs when I heard my name. My mother's voice was calm, confident, the way it always was when she thought she was being reasonable. She said they would cover Lauren's tuition in full. that it was an investment, that Lauren had so much potential. My father agreed easily. Then my mother added that I would figure something out, that I always did. I stood there gripping the railing, my chest tight, listening as they planned my future without me. No one asked what I wanted or needed. They spoke about me like a solved problem, something already handled. I didn't interrupt. I didn't confront them. I went back upstairs quietly and lay awake staring at the ceiling until morning. When August came, Lauren moved into a bright dorm on campus, fully furnished and paid for. I rented a small room off campus, the cheapest place I could find, close enough to walk but far enough that no one mistook it for comfort. The pipes rattled when the heat came on. The walls were thin. I worked evenings shelving books at the campus library and cleaned offices on weekends. Every dollar went toward tuition, books, rent. Lauren called home for spending money and received it without hesitation. Sometimes I saw her on campus between classes, laughing with friends, sunlight catching her hair. She'd wave, ask how I was doing, comment on how tired I looked. I always smiled back. I learned how to make exhaustion invisible. The first semester nearly broke me. Tuition deadlines loomed, and no matter how many hours I worked, I was short. I called home, rehearsing my words carefully, telling myself I wasn't asking for a gift, just a loan. My mother listened quietly, then reminded me that they had already paid for Lauren. She said Lauren deserved it more. She said I was strong, that I would manage. I hung up without arguing. I stood in my room staring at my reflection in the dark window, realizing something inside me had finally closed. That conversation didn't shatter me. It hardened me. That night, I walked to the library early and sat alone among the shelves, planning. Scholarships, assistant positions, anything that didn't require asking permission. I started arriving before sunrise, studying while the building was still locked and the campus quiet. Exhaustion became routine. Around that time, I caught the attention of a professor who noticed my work ethic and offered me a position assisting with his research. It paid little, but it opened doors. For the first time, someone saw me without comparing me to Lauren. When the scholarship email arrived months later, I stared at it for a long time before opening it, afraid it wasn't real. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell my sister. I worked harder than ever, carrying the secret with me like something fragile and powerful at the same time. By the time graduation approached, I had finished college without their help, without their approval. I invited them anyway, because part of me needed to see what would happen when truth finally stepped into the light. Graduation day unfolded beneath a sky so clear it almost seemed unreal, the kind of light that softens the edges of everything it touches. I woke before my alarm, sitting on the edge of my bed with a calm I didn't feel but had practiced enough to carry convincingly. Outside, campus was alive, students weaving through pathways with rolled diplomas in hand, parents balancing bouquets and balloons, cameras clicking in anticipation of the big moment. I slipped into my black gown slowly, smoothing my hair, adjusting my cap, and shaping my face into the expression I had perfected over years. Quiet, capable, unbothered. No one needed to know how many nights I had spent alone, how many hours I had counted every dollar and planned each step to arrive here without their help. Lauren appeared at the door just as I finished straightening my collar. She looked radiant, her smile effortless, as if every triumph in her life had been laid out on a silver platter for her to claim. Our parents were already seated in the front row, my mother clutching her phone, ready to capture every moment, my father sitting stiffly beside her, scanning the room as though it were a landscape he could control. Lauren chatted about dinner plans, pictures, and weekend celebrations, her voice light and carefree. I nodded in all the right places, but my mind remained elsewhere, tracing every year we had spent side by side yet worlds apart. She never asked how I managed it all, never noticed the sacrifices hidden behind my calm exterior. Perhaps she assumed it had been easy, or perhaps it was easier not to know. The auditorium buzzed with excitement as we lined up, classmates whispering, families calling names, the air thick with expectation. I took my seat in the long row, glancing once toward my parents. My mother's face lit up when she saw us, lifting her phone like she might somehow capture not just the image, but the story she believed she had authored. My father's posture was rigid, his hands folded tightly as he scanned the room, looking for familiarity. They looked proud in a shallow, rehearsed way, the pride of people convinced they understood the narrative of their children. The ceremony began, speeches flowing over the audience in waves that felt distant and hollow. I focused on breathing, on the slow rise and fall of my chest, on the rhythm of my own heartbeat. Names were called, applause followed predictably, until a slight pause shifted the energy in the room. The announcer's voice changed tone, deliberate and measured, and then he began describing my journey. He spoke of resilience, of nights spent working to pay for an education, of a young woman achieving excellence without parental support. Each word struck carefully, like the tip of a needle piercing a veil I had long hidden behind. When my name rang out, it startled me slightly, not because I hadn't earned it, but because the world suddenly seemed to lean in closer. Applause filled the room, louder than I expected, carrying with it the weight of recognition I had never received at home. I rose and walked toward the stage, heels clicking softly on the polished floor. My eyes flicked briefly to my parents. My mother's smile faltered, confusion flashing across her face. My father's eyebrows lifted, a silent question forming in his expression. Lauren stared, her lips parted slightly, the camera she held frozen mid-frame. For the first time, I felt a strange equilibrium. I had arrived, and my parents could see it, whether they liked it or not. The dean shook my hand and congratulated me, the flash of cameras catching every gesture. I felt a lightness I had never known, not from validation, but from the quiet satisfaction of proof. The truth I had carried in silence, the hours, the sacrifices, the nights of exhaustion, all crystallized in this single fleeting moment. I had built a life without their help, and now it could no longer be hidden. After the ceremony, congratulations came from every direction. Professors, strangers, even potential recruiters. I answered politely, moving through the crowd with practiced ease. When I finally approached my family, my mother spoke first, her voice tight, a tremor betraying her composure. She admitted she hadn't realized that she would have done things differently had she known. I spoke calmly, evenly, explaining that she had known enough all along. That her choices were intentional, based on the belief that Lauren deserved support more than I did. My father tried to explain, saying he thought pushing me would make me stronger. I asked if strength had ever felt like loneliness, and he said nothing. Lauren whispered that she hadn't realized, that she had assumed I had helped too. I told her it wasn't her fault, but it wasn't a coincidence either. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I simply stated the truth. I had built everything quietly because I had learned early not to expect support, and their words, their neglect, had shaped me more than they realized. I was grateful, not to them, but for what I had achieved in spite of them. A recruiter approached, inviting me to a private conversation. I excused myself and followed, the future unfolding with opportunities one had only dreamed of. Behind the glass, I saw my parents and Lauren standing together, uncertain, small in a room meant for celebration. For the first time, I felt no pull toward them, no need for validation, no lingering hope for their pride. That evening, my mother sent a text, "We're proud of you." I replied politely with a few words. Pride after the fact felt hollow. What mattered was what I had already claimed for myself. I packed my belongings in silence, preparing for the move I had planned for months, and mailed a copy of my award letter to my parents, no note attached. Just proof of everything they had doubted, everything they had overlooked. The journey away from home was quiet, reflective. I watched the familiar streets fade beneath the train window, each mile stretching into relief rather than loss. In my new apartment, I stood on the balcony, the city lights sparkling like a constellation I could claim as my own. I thought of all the times I had been told I didn't deserve certain things, all the times my worth had been measured against someone else's needs. Perhaps I hadn't deserved it, because no one had ever believed I did. But I had earned it. Days turned into weeks. My new routine became a rhythm, a promise to myself. I dove into work, establishing my independence fully. I thought of my parents' words, how they had said Lauren deserved more, and smiled quietly. Those words had been a challenge, a spark that drove me forward. I realized revenge didn't always have to be loud, that the most satisfying form could be the life you build, the achievements you claim without acknowledgement or assistance, the quiet dismantling of someone else's narrative about you. I began meeting with mentors, building networks, and accepting opportunities that came my way. Every achievement became another brick in a wall I had constructed to protect myself from the shadow of neglect. The city outside my window became a stage where my efforts, my discipline, and my tenacity mattered more than any judgment from my family. Months passed, and letters of recognition, awards, and job offers began to arrive. I accepted them without fanfare, internalizing each accomplishment as a testament to my resilience. One evening, a significant offer came from a prestigious accounting firm in New York. I accepted immediately, the weight of uncertainty lifting from my shoulders. My parents, still unaware of the scope of my achievements, were left in the position of onlookers, powerless to influence the story I had written myself. I visited the award ceremony for one final event, curious to see their reaction. They arrived, proud as always, expecting to share the spotlight. When my name was announced, the hall echoed with words that carried all the recognition I had been denied. The hard work, the nights of labor, the sacrifices without support. My mother's smile froze. My father's jaw tightened. Lauren's camera fell at her side. I moved toward the stage, calm, deliberate, every step a reclaiming of space I had always deserved. After the applause faded, I greeted my family with composed courtesy. My mother attempted praise, awkward and strained. I responded with calm acknowledgement, refusing to validate their delayed recognition with an emotional reaction. My father tried explanations. I asked if strength had ever felt like loneliness. Lauren murmured an apology. I accepted neither her words nor her intent, offering only the truth of my journey, that I had succeeded quietly, because no one believed I could. The evening concluded with new connections, opportunities, and recognition. I stepped away from my family's gaze, knowing my worth no longer depended on their approval. I walked home through the quiet city streets, the lights reflecting the glow of accomplishment, the weight of years of labor finally resting lightly on my shoulders. Before leaving town, I sent one final communication to my parents, a single envelope containing a copy of my award letter. No note, no explanation, just undeniable evidence of what I had built without them. The train carried me away, the city shrinking behind me, each mile a reminder that independence had its own kind of triumph. The first night in New York, I stood on the balcony of my tiny apartment, watching taxis thread their paths through the illuminated streets, lights flickering like affirmations. I thought of my mother's words, "She deserves it more than you do." I smiled, not out of malice, but understanding. Perhaps I hadn't deserved it before, but I had earned it now, completely, without compromise. Sometimes revenge is subtle. It's quiet. It's measured. It's building a life so undeniable that those who doubted you can only watch from the sidelines, realizing too late that you were never the one who needed saving. That night, I set my award on the desk beside the scholarship letter, side by side, silent monuments to the years of labor, endurance, and careful strategy. I wasn't chasing validation anymore. I wasn't proving anything to anyone but myself. And for the first time in my life, the future felt entirely mine to claim. Moral lessons. Sometimes the people who are supposed to support you the most will underestimate you, dismiss you, or favor others. But life has a way of rewarding persistence, discipline, and quiet resilience. Never let someone else's judgment define your worth. Use it as fuel to build your own path. Stand firm in your goals. Work diligently even when no one is watching, and trust that your efforts will speak louder than words or recognition from others. Remember, true success is not just achieving your dreams, it's proving to yourself that you were capable all along, regardless of who believed in you. And when you finally arrive, do it with grace, knowing that your journey and your strength are entirely yours.